What's going on, everyone, and welcome into Blizzard's podcast filled to the brim with glitchy analysis and freezing cold takes, so cold that they're boiling hot. In this episode, we are continuing our college football playoff series. We're going to be talking about the Kansas State Wildcats today. Let's go ahead and get into the star players. This Kansas State, his team has got a lot of really good players on the offensive side of the ball. Avery Johnson, sophomore quarterback, replaces Will Howard from last season. To me, that says a lot about who he is and his capabilities as a quarterback. This guy is going to be able to light up the field. I think he's a very talented dual threat quarterback. And then to pair with him in the backfield, DJ Giddens, running back. This guy is spectacular. I think he had 1,300 rushing yards last year. I expect more of the same this year. He's one of the big leaders on this team, and he is going to be the focal point of the offense in a Kansas State team that's going to look much different this season. On the defensive side of the ball, you've got Jacob Parrish, lockdown corner. He takes over the DB1 spot for this team, and I think if there's anyone on the field who's going to set the tone, it's going to be this guy. And then to cover his backside, we've got Marquez Sigel, I believe, free safety. I think if there's going to be anyone to stop an offense from taking the top off the defense, it's this guy right here. So that's the stars for this team. Let's go ahead and get into a couple storylines, talk about the losses and additions for this team, and then we'll get, of course, into our record prediction. So first storyline I want to talk about, there are a ton of questions on the offensive side of the football. The draft, the transfer portal, the lack of big-time recruits and portal players coming back in leaves this Kansas State offense with a ton of questions. I mean, you've got a new quarterback, you've got new receivers, your best offensive weapon that's not a runner gets drafted. I don't know where this Kansas State team is going to go, but they do have capable coaching staff, or they do have a capable coaching staff, and I do think they have some players that are pretty talented on the offensive side of the ball, but pretty much an entire new offense for this team. There's a lot of questions. I need to have them answered in the first 4 or 5 games of the year if you want to be confident in this Kansas State team. Now, let's talk about the losses and additions. So in the losses side of things, you got Will Howard, most importantly, your starting quarterback, Big 12 champion quarterback Will Howard, hits the portal, goes to Ohio State. He just got named the starter there, which I think is really indicative of the talent that he has and the loss that Kansas State has on their hands here. They lost the starting quarterback for Ohio State, basically. I mean, that's a big loss. Now you also got Ben Sinnott. He is a tight end last year, a multifaceted weapon all over the field. You could place him anywhere, blocking, receiving, doesn't matter. He was your guy on offense. He gets drafted, I believe, to the Washington Commanders. And then the leader of your offensive line, Cooper Beebe, All-American, gets drafted as well. Those are three massive losses on the offensive side of the football. Now let's go ahead and talk about the additions to this team. Easton Kitty, a offensive tackle from the portal. Now, Chris Kleiman, I believe, his coaching is from the North Dakota area, so he's got some connections there, I believe, and that's why Easton Kitty comes in. He's going to be taking over the starting left tackle spot. Dante Cephas, a wide receiver from Penn State. Now, he was a wide receiver at Kent State and was a 1,000-yard receiver there. Went to Penn State for a season, didn't have the production I guess he was looking for. He hits the portal for his graduate year, and he comes to Kansas State. I believe this will be a renaissance for him to go back to his Kent State days. And then last but not least, and I think this is pretty underrated, maybe not for this season, but for seasons going forward, Dylan Edwards, running back from Colorado, led the team in rushing, although it was only 300 yards. Still, dynamic playmaker. You saw it especially early on in the season. He took over games, and I believe that is exactly what he could do for Kansas State, especially on third down. I think being a receiving back is so important, and I mean, a pretty talented runner, if I do say so myself. So I believe that that's one of the big pickups. He's going to be a dynamic player and provide depth for this Kansas State team. And I wouldn't be surprised if they have him and DJ Giddens there out on the field at the same time. This is a really impressive pickup to me. Now, let's go ahead and talk about Where do the leaders come from on this team? You have lost a lot, including your probably most important leader, Cooper Beebe, from the offensive line. But DJ Giddens and Austin Moore are going to be the de facto leaders of this team, and they are players that have experienced where this Kansas State team has been over the last 3 seasons. 27-13, Big 12 champions. I mean, for a second there, they were going toe-to-toe with the Heisman Trophy winner and the Alabama Crimson Tide in the Sugar Bowl. I definitely think that this team is yet another winner, and it's probably because of their coach, Chris Kleiman, who will be the ultimate leader for this team. He is a certified winner, 4-time FCS national championship or national champion coach. 4 out of 5 of his seasons at Kansas State have been 8+ wins. He is a great situational football coach. If you look at his games where he is obviously the underdog, he plays in, he coaches in great situations. I'm definitely a believer in his ability to coach these players up on and off the field. That's why I have so much faith in this Kansas State team. Now, before we get into our record prediction, let's talk about a hinge game. And I think this has college football playoff potential on the line here, and that's the rivalry versus Kansas. I believe, let's take a look. That's taking place as their 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th game. 9, 10, yeah, 8th game of the season. I think that Kansas State will most likely be undefeated going into this game, and actually maybe a loss, but it doesn't matter. The Big 12 championship will probably be on the line for Kansas State, and I definitely think that if they can win this game, they're getting there and potentially a college football playoff spot. But Kansas has the opportunity to play upset here and destroy Kansas State's hope of getting into their first college football playoff. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the record prediction. First 5 games: home versus UT Martin, at Tulane, home for Arizona, at BYU, home for Oklahoma State. Kansas State has a very sneaky home field advantage here. So for games like Arizona and Oklahoma State, I know that those teams are pretty evenly matched, but I'm going to give the edge to the home team and give Kansas State that win. Now, at BYU, at Tulane versus UT Martin, those are all easy wins to me. BYU and Tulane are in complete rebuild mode. UT Martin, an FCS team, I'm not buying it. That's 5 wins in a row. But then at Colorado, and a lot of people are not as high on Colorado as I am. I think that home field advantage, the fact that they're both going to be undefeated going into that's going to be a big noon kickoff matchup. It's going to be spectacular. We're going to see that game in blowout fashion, I believe. Colorado is going to gun Kansas State. That's their first loss of the season. At West Virginia, it's tough to win in Morgantown, but I do believe the talent gap between Kansas State and West Virginia is enough to give Kansas State the win. Home versus Kansas, the rivalry, the hinge game with lots of playoff implications on the line. I think Kansas State wins that game. Home field advantage. I definitely like Jalen Daniels more than I do Avery Johnson, but the rest of that Kansas State defense versus Kansas's, I give the edge to Kansas State. So I'm going to say that's a win for Kansas State. At Houston, another win, a rebuilding program in shambles. Home versus Arizona State, home versus Cincinnati, back-to-back, easy conference wins to end out the season at home. And then at Iowa State on the road, that is a very, very dangerous game. If I had alarm bells, I would be putting on those sound effects right now to let you know this is an upset alert game. I will give Kansas State the edge right now, but mark my words, Rocco Beck and Jaden Higgins are not going to let this game slide that easily. Iowa State is a very feisty team and could easily give this Kansas State team fits. I will say Kansas State can maybe get the win. We'll call it 11-1, a Big 12 championship game berth, and a chance to make it to the college football playoffs. But that's going to do it for my preview for Kansas State. I'm pretty high on them. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like and subscribe. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.